Good afternoon. My name is Jared Eisenhower. Today I will be informing you on the subject of haptics. Now, I'm sure the majority of you are wondering, what are haptics? Haptics is defined by Cheney and Martin in oral and nonverbal communication patterns is the communication through bodily contact. The most obvious example of haptics in the business environment is your handshake. In American culture, it is considered rude to not take place in this transitional physical interaction. A few other things you need to consider when dealing with haptics is the placement of your hands on another individual. I know this seems simple and easy, but a lot of the time it's subtle differences that can really persuade someone. A few places you need to think about when dealing with someone else. By putting your hand on your shoulder, you're indicating that you're their companion. By putting your hand on their back, you're indicating that you can support them. However, if you're ever to place your hand on somebody's head, it immediately gives off an air of pretentiousness. Thanks, Scott. In fact, in the cultures of Thailand and India, it is considered rude and offensive to put your hand on anybody's head, regardless of what age they are. Another example of inappropriate haptics would deal with a hug in the work environment. Hugs are perfectly acceptable in a social context. However, in work, to hug, it seems inappropriate and can lead to sexual harassment allegations. Next, I would like to discuss haptics and what haptics has the ability to communicate. In the United States, haptics primarily communicates hierarchy, power, or status. A few examples of these relationships would be between your boss and your employer. It's okay for a boss to come up and touch an employer, but it's not usually okay for an employer to touch a boss. Another example, which is an extreme, would be between a doctor and a patient. While it is sometimes very awkward when a doctor touches you, it's okay because that's their job. But you cannot return the touch to the doctor. It does not work like that. A situation in which it doesn't work for either party to physically interact would be in an educational system. Teachers are not allowed to touch students, and students are not allowed to touch teachers. I think this is best represented in a quote from a movie when Mr. Schneebly says, "All of your kids have really touched me, and I'm pretty sure I've touched them too." Clearly this wasn't received well by the parents and didn't go over as he planned. But on a more serious note, several years ago, when President Carter was in Egypt during mediating peace treaties, Egyptian President Anwar Sadat repetitively placed his hand on President Carter's knee. This was not only a symbol of companionship, but also to show that Egypt was supposed to be considered an equal to America. To continue talking about international affairs, I would like to now discuss haptics on an international level. Based on a chart from R.E. Axtell's Gestures, there are three kinds of cultural variety. Cultures which embrace touch, cultures which do not embrace touch, and the middle ground. Today I would like to focus on the two extremes of the spectrum because the middle ground is fairly obvious. In countries such as Latin America, Portugal, Greece, Spain, and Italy, it is not uncommon to see two people interacting, embracing, or kissing, regardless of what sex, age, or gender, age, or social status. However, in countries such as Canada, England, Japan, and Scandinavia, it is considered incredibly offensive for someone to publicly embrace, kiss, or touch. I believe the U.S. works as a mediator between these two, because while you do see people interacting in public in the U.S., we're still very strict and unaccepting of any sort of homogeneous interaction between two people, which just means the same sex usually can't hug without having some sort of weird judgment placed upon them. In closing, I want to highlight the importance of multiculturalism in the business environment. As it grows and evolves, we must adapt ourselves and become culturally aware, because it could make all the difference. I want to finish with a quote by motivational speaker and author Leo Buscaglia. Too often, we underestimate the power of a touch. A smile, a kind word, a listening ear, an honest compliment are the smallest act of caring, all of which have the potential to turn your life around. I personally find this quote interesting due to the fact that it not only highlights the importance of touch and communication, but other conversational strategies. Thank you, and if you have any questions, feel free to ask me.